One minute, he was a rising rap sensation. The next, his life was cut short at just 24 in one of the most cold-blooded, calculated hits hip-hop has seen in years. His murder now links major industry names to federal indictments, murder-for-hire plots, and a deadly feud brewing since 2020. Let's get into it. The fatal ambush, how Lul Pab lost his life in the crossfire. August 19th, 2022. That's a date that changed everything for the Robinson family, for rapper Quando Rondo, and honestly, for the entire landscape of Chicago and Savannah hip-hop. It was a regular Friday evening in Los Angeles, right near the Beverly Center in the Beverly Grove neighborhood. But what went down at approximately 5:30 p.m. that evening was anything but regular, my guy. Xavier Robinson, better known as Lul Pab, was fatally shot in what federal authorities would later describe as a cold-blooded murder-for-hire attack. Now here's where it gets even more tragic, fam. Pab wasn't even the intended target. According to federal indictments and official reports, the real target was his cousin, the rapper Quando Rondo, whose government name is Tykean Terrell Bowman. But in the chaos of that ambush, in the hail of gunfire that erupted at that gas station, it was Pab who paid the ultimate price, becoming collateral damage in a beef that he didn't even start. Let me paint the picture of how this whole thing went down, because the details are straight chilling when you really break them down. The suspects had been stalking Quando Rondo's black Cadillac Escalade for hours, following him and his crew from location to location. They hit up a hotel, pulled up to a weed dispensary, checked out a clothing store. These dudes were on them like shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They were using multiple vehicles, a BMW and an Infiniti, just circling, watching, calculating. This wasn't no spontaneous act of violence. Nah, this was premeditated, organized, military-style execution planning. When that moment finally came at the gas station near La Cienega and Beverly Boulevards, at least 3 assailants emerged from a white sedan. Some reports say they might have come from an adjacent alley, but either way, they came with one mission and one mission only. These cats unleashed hell, fam. We're talking about at least 18 rounds fired, including shots from what authorities identified as a machine gun. 18 rounds, bruh, in broad daylight at a busy intersection with civilians everywhere. That's the level of disregard for human life we're talking about here. Lul Pab was either pumping gas or inside the Escalade when the bullets started flying. The autopsy would later confirm that he died from multiple gunshot wounds, with the official cause of death ruled as homicide. There were no drugs, no other contributing factors mentioned in the public reports. This was straight up murder, plain and simple.
They pulled up, they were pumping gas, and it looks like they probably finished pumping gas, and the suspects approached from the alley, got out of the car, and started shooting at those victims.
And in those chaotic moments, Quando Rondo himself pulled his cousin from the vehicle, visibly distraught, traumatized, watching his blood, his family member, his day one, bleeding out right there in front of him. Viral footage that circulated on social media showed the absolute devastation on Rondo's face. Pab was rushed to a nearby hospital, but the damage was too extensive, too catastrophic. He was pronounced dead, leaving behind his family, his businesses, his dreams, and a cousin who would be forever changed by what he witnessed that day. The suspects fled the scene in that white sedan, disappearing into the Los Angeles streets, and for a while, it seemed like this might be just another unsolved shooting, another statistic, another young black man taken by gun violence in America. But here's where this story takes a turn that nobody saw coming, at least not immediately. See, the Los Angeles Police Department initially reported no clear motive, but federal investigators, they had been watching, they had been building a case, and they had been connecting dots that would eventually lead to one of the biggest names in Chicago drill music, Lil Durk, whose government name is Dirk Devontae Banks.
We knew when the others were charged that it was a conspiracy and there were multiple players in it. The fact that he's now being charged in such close proximity to those other charges suggests, of course, that this is related to them and that the conspiracy is even wider than originally presented.
Now, to understand why Lul Pab died that day, we gotta rewind the clock back to November 6, 2020, because that's when the seeds of this tragedy were planted. That's the night when King Von, whose real name was Davon Bennett, was killed outside Monaco Hookah Lounge in Atlanta. Von wasn't just any rapper, he was Lil Durk's protege, his brother in every sense except blood, a key member of the Only the Family, or OTF, collective that Durk had built. These two had come up together in Chicago's brutal street scene, survived the trenches together, and were making it out together through their music.
Now, when it comes to Lil Durk, are you biologically related to him?
That's my brother. Like, we ain't got the same mother and same father though, but that's
The confrontation that night started as a fistfight between King Von's crew and Quando Rondo's crew, but it escalated quickly when Timothy Lul, Tim Leaks, an associate of Quando Rondo, fired the shots that killed Von. Leaks would later claim self-defense, and charges against him were eventually dropped. But for Lil Durk and the OTF family, Von's death wasn't something that could just be forgiven or forgotten. In the drill music world, in that street culture, loyalty runs deeper than blood, and when someone takes your brother, the code demands a response. Federal authorities allege that Lil Durk placed a bounty on Quando Rondo's life in retaliation for King Von's death. We're talking about a price on someone's head, a contract on their life, something straight out of a mob movie, except this was real life, real people, real consequences. The feud between Durk's camp and Rondo's camp played out in diss tracks, in social media posts, in subliminal shots, and not so subliminal threats, each side escalating the tension, each side pushing the envelope further and further. And that brings us back to August 2022, when allegedly 5 members of the OTF collective decided to fly from Chicago to California with one mission: to collect on that bounty, to get revenge for Von, to end Quando Rondo's life. These men, Kayvon London Grant, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, Didi, David Bryan Lindsay, Brown Iez, Keith Jones, Flacca, and Asa Houston, Boogie, would all eventually be charged in federal court for their alleged roles in what happened to Lul Pab. The planning was meticulous, calculated. On August 18, 2022, these 5 individuals boarded one-way flights from Chicago to California, and according to federal prosecutors, these flights and a hotel room were paid for using a credit card linked to OTF and Lil Durk himself. Text messages showed Durk instructing associates to be careful, to avoid leaving traces. "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me," he allegedly texted. Durk himself reportedly flew out separately on a private jet with Grant, who used Durk's credit card to purchase ski masks for the group, masks that would be worn during the attack. Prosecutors paint a picture of an OTF member promising lucrative music opportunities to whoever successfully carried out the hit on Quando Rondo. We're talking about incentivizing murder, about turning someone's death into a business transaction, about using the allure of the music industry to motivate violence. It's a dark, twisted reality that shows just how far this beef had gone, how much the thirst for revenge had consumed everyone involved. The plan was to kill Quando Rondo. That was the target, that was the goal, that was what everyone signed up for. But in the moment of execution, in those chaotic seconds when bullets started flying at that gas station, it was Lul Pab who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, standing too close to his cousin, caught in the crossfire of a war that he had nothing to do with starting. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner confirmed the cause of death as homicide by gunshot wounds. And just like that, a 24-year-old entrepreneur, cousin, friend, and family member was gone forever. This wasn't just another shooting. This wasn't just another statistic. This was a young man with dreams, with businesses, with potential, whose life was ended because of a beef between rappers, because of a cycle of violence that keeps claiming lives in the hip-hop community. And as we'll see in the next parts of this story, the ripple effects of what happened that day would continue for years, leading to federal indictments, wrongful death lawsuits, and a reckoning within the rap game about the real cost of this street life that gets glorified in so many songs. Who was Lul Pab, the entrepreneur behind the tragedy? Now that y'all understand how Lul Pab lost his life, it's crucial that we take a moment to really understand who Savier Robinson actually was, because too often in these stories, the victims get reduced to just their street names, just their connection to famous people, just a statistic in the ongoing epidemic of violence. But Pab was so much more than that, and his story, his real story, deserves to be told with the respect and depth that any young life cut short deserves. You feel me? Savier Robinson was born around 1998 in Savannah, Georgia, a city that's got its own unique flavor in the southern hip-hop landscape. Pab grew up in an environment that was deeply connected to the local street scene, but what made him different, what made him stand out from so many others in similar situations, was his entrepreneurial spirit, his drive to build something legitimate, something that could provide for his family and set him up for a future beyond the streets. Despite facing significant legal challenges, and we'll get into those in a minute, Pab demonstrated remarkable business acumen by founding not just one, but 2 legitimate companies while he was out on bond. Let that sink in for a second, fam. Here's a young brother, 23-24, years old, dealing with serious legal pressure, facing potential prison time, and instead of giving up or falling deeper into the streets, he's out here building businesses, creating opportunities, showing that entrepreneurial hustle that so many people talk about, but so few actually execute on. His first venture was A&S Express Carriers, a trucking company that he owned and operated. Now, if you don't know anything about the trucking industry, let me put you on game real quick. This ain't some small-time hustle. The trucking business requires capital, requires licenses, requires understanding understanding of logistics and regulations, requires managing drivers and routes and maintenance. It's a real business with real overhead and real potential for profit. But Pab didn't stop there. His second business was Supreme Exotic Frenchies, a kennel that specialized in breeding French bulldogs. These ventures highlighted something really important about who Xavier Robinson was at his core. He was a hustler in the truest, most positive sense of that word. He saw opportunities, he took risks, he built things from the ground up. Speaking of legal troubles, we gotta address the elephant in the room, because Pab's background included some serious run-ins with the law that shaped much of his adult life and the circumstances he was navigating when he was killed. In January 2019, he was one of 11 defendants hit with a 71-count indictment under Georgia's RICO laws. That's Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the same law that's being used against Young Thug and YSL, the same law that's designed to take down organized criminal enterprises. The charges stemmed from what prosecutors described as a 9-month crime spree that Pab and his co-defendants allegedly engaged in. We're talking about theft, burglary, entering automobiles, fraudulent financial transactions, and most significantly, the theft of 10 cars valued at over $100,000 from the Chatham Parkway Collision Center in Savannah between August 19th and 2017. But here's something interesting that a lot of people don't know. Savannah Police Sergeant Jonathan Puhala noted in a statement that while they initially suspected gang ties, the group was not formally classified as a gang. As he put it, they weren't necessarily gang members, but in the beginning of the investigation, we didn't know that. We went where the investigation led us, and that led us to a RICO indictment as opposed to gang indictment. That distinction matters because it shows that this wasn't about organized gang activity in the traditional sense. These were young dudes making bad decisions, getting into criminal activity, but not necessarily part of some larger gang structure. On top of the RICO charges, Pab also faced separate cases including fleeing or attempting to elude police. And we're not talking about a simple traffic stop. Nah, this involved a high-speed chase that went across state lines from Georgia to South Carolina. There were also charges of second-degree burglary, theft by taking, and even second-degree cruelty to children, which adds additional layers of complexity to his legal situation. Here's the really tragic part that a lot of people don't realize. Pab had been out on bond for 2 years, waiting for his day in court, and he was scheduled for a trial docket call on August 26, 2022. That's exactly 1 week after he was killed. 1 week. Instead, he died just days before he could resolve this chapter of his life, and all the cases against him were dismissed due to his death. Now, Pab's connection to the rap world was primarily through his cousin, Quando Rondo, whose real name is Tyquan Terrell Bowman. Rondo had risen to prominence in the hip-hop world with tracks like I Remember and his affiliation with Never Broke Again, Youngboy Never Broke Again's label. The family bond between Pab and Rondo was strong. They traveled together, they appeared in social media posts together, and Rondo frequently referenced Pab in his music, immortalizing their relationship in lyrics that would take on tragic significance after Pab's death. In Rondo's 2018 song ABG, he raps, "Through the cut with Pab, we gon' bang on him. Leaky in the back seat with that chopper, we gon' swang on him." These weren't just throwaway bars. This was Rondo putting respect on his cousin's name, showing the world that Pab was part of his inner circle, part of his day ones, someone he trusted to ride with him through whatever. That type of loyalty, that type of bond, is what makes Pab's death even more painful. Rondo didn't just lose a family member, he lost a brother in every sense that matters. Pab himself had some involvement in making music, operating under the alias Band Up Pablo, releasing songs that commonly reference guns and violence, aligning with the drill and street rap subgenres that were popular in both Chicago and the South. He wasn't a signed artist, wasn't a major player in the industry, wasn't out here competing for chart positions or Grammy nominations, but he was authentic, he was real, he was making music that reflected his lived experiences, his environment, his reality. The tragedy of Lul Pab's death isn't just that he died young, though that's tragic enough on its own. The real tragedy is what could have been. Here was a young man who had demonstrated the ability to build businesses, who had the family support and connections to potentially transition fully into the legitimate world, who was just days away from resolving his legal issues and moving forward with a clean slate. Instead, he became another victim of hip-hop's culture of violence, another young black man killed before his 25th birthday. And perhaps most tragically, Pab died for a beef that wasn't even his. He didn't have issues with Lil Durk, he didn't have problems with OTF, he didn't kill King Von, he didn't even have direct involvement in that Atlanta shooting. His only crime, if you can even call it that, was being related to Quando Rondo, being loyal to his cousin, being in the wrong place at the wrong time when people came looking for revenge. The legal aftermath, federal indictments, wrongful death suits, and hip-hop's reckoning. Alright fam, now we gotta talk about what happened after that tragic day in August 2022, because the story of Lul Pab's death didn't end at that gas station. In fact, in many ways, that's where it really began, at least in terms of the legal consequences, the federal investigation, and the reckoning that would eventually come for everyone allegedly involved. For the first couple years after Pab's murder, it seemed like the case might go cold. The LAPD initially reported no clear motive, and while there was speculation in the streets and on social media about who might be responsible and why, nothing concrete emerged publicly. Quando Rondo mourned his cousin, tried to move on with his life, released music addressing the pain and trauma, but there was no justice, no arrests, no closure for the family. But then, on October 24, 2024, more than 2 years after Lul Pab's death, everything changed. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California announced federal charges against 5 individuals connected to the Only the Family collective: Kevon London Grant, known as Cuz or Vonnie, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, DD, Keith Jones, Flacca, David Bryan Lindsay, Brown Iez, and Asa Houston, Boogie. The charges: conspiracy to commit murder for hire, resulting in death, and use of a machine gun in a violent crime. We're talking about federal charges, which means if convicted, these dudes are looking at life in prison. Real, actual life behind bars with no possibility of parole. The federal indictment laid out the prosecution's theory of the case in detail that was absolutely chilling when you read through it. According to prosecutors, these 5 individuals flew from Chicago to California on August 18, 2022, with flights and hotel accommodations paid for using a credit card linked to OTF and Lil Durk. This wasn't them using their own money, their own resources. Allegedly, the entire operation was financed through OTF, which the feds are characterizing not just as a record label, but as a criminal enterprise that facilitated and funded violent crimes. Text messages presented in the indictment show Durk allegedly instructing associates to be careful about how they book travel, warning them, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." That's showing consciousness of guilt, showing awareness that what they were planning was illegal and needed to be done in a way that couldn't be traced back to him directly. Durk himself allegedly flew separately via private jet, traveling with Kevon Grant, who used Durk's credit card to purchase ski masks that would later be used in the attack. Everything was allegedly coordinated, planned, financed from the top down. But the real bombshell came the very next day, October 25th, 2024, when Lil Durk himself was arrested near Miami International Airport, allegedly attempting to flee the country. Think about that for a second. One of the biggest names in Chicago drill music, a platinum-selling artist with millions of fans, getting arrested at an airport while reportedly trying to book international flights. The feds charged him with conspiracy to commit murder for hire and conspiracy to use interstate facilities for murder for hire, resulting in death. Serious federal charges that, if proven, could put him away for life. The prosecution's case against Durk goes beyond just the financial paper trail and the travel arrangements. They allege that Durk placed a bounty on Quando Rondo's life following King Von's death, and that an OTF member promised lucrative music opportunities to whoever successfully carried out the hit. They're painting a picture of OTF not as a legitimate music collective, but as an organized criminal enterprise that used its resources and influence to facilitate murder for hire. Now, Durk's defense team has been fighting these charges hard, arguing that the prosecution is misinterpreting evidence and relying too heavily on artistic expression. Drew Findling and Durk's other attorneys filed a motion to dismiss in early October 2025, arguing that the indictment is vague and doesn't provide specific enough details about the alleged conspiracy. They're claiming there's a fundamental factual error in the prosecution's case, particularly regarding their use of song lyrics as evidence. This brings up one of the most controversial aspects of the case, the prosecution's use of Durk's rap lyrics in interviews as evidence of his guilt. They've pointed to songs recorded before Pab's death that allegedly reference putting hits on people, as well as a DJ Academics interview where Durk allegedly made statements that could be interpreted as admissions. But Durk's family and defense team call these fan edits and argue that using artistic expression as evidence in criminal cases sets a dangerous precedent for criminalizing hip-hop itself. A hearing on Durk's motion to dismiss is scheduled for November 18, 2025, and that could be a crucial moment in determining how this case proceeds. But even beyond the motion to dismiss, the prosecution has been building their case in other ways that show just how seriously they're taking this. But it gets even more serious. The FBI has reported that fans of Lil Durk have been making threatening phone calls to Judge Michael W. Fitzgerald and prosecutors handling the case. This has led prosecutors to file a motion requesting an anonymous jury, citing significant risk of witness tampering and the need to protect jurors from potential intimidation or threats. That's how serious this case has gotten. The feds are worried about the safety of everyone involved in the trial because of the level of loyalty and street mentality that Durk's fanbase brings to the situation. Durk has been denied bail multiple times, despite his legal team offering substantial financial guarantees. They offered up to $5 million in cash, plus security measures, but Judge Fitzgerald rejected all bail requests, citing both flight risk. Remember, Durk was arrested at an airport, allegedly trying to flee internationally, and danger to the community. community. The judge noted that with a potential mandatory life sentence hanging over his head, Durk would have every incentive to flee if released on bail, and that his wealth and resources make standard bail conditions insufficient to guarantee his appearance at trial. Now, one crucial piece of good news for Durk, relatively speaking, is that prosecutors announced in June 2025 that they would not be seeking the death penalty. That takes the ultimate punishment off the table, but he's still looking at life in prison without parole if convicted on all charges. So this is still an incredibly serious situation with life-altering consequences, regardless of how the trial turns out. But the criminal case against Durk and his co-defendants isn't the only legal battle stemming from Lul Pab's death. In February 2025, Lul Pab's mother, Andrea Robinson, filed a wrongful death lawsuit in Cook County against Lil Durk, his business manager, OTF, and related entities. This civil case runs parallel to the criminal proceedings and allows the family to seek monetary damages and accountability through the civil courts, even if the criminal trial hasn't concluded yet. This case has become a flashpoint in the larger conversation about violence in hip-hop and how we as a culture deal with it. Some people see Durk's prosecution as justified, as an example of finally holding people accountable when their alleged actions cross the line from art into actual criminal conspiracy. Others see it as another example of how the justice system disproportionately targets hip-hop artists, using their lyrics and public personas against them in ways that wouldn't happen in other musical genres. The case has also highlighted the disturbing trend of young rappers dying from gun violence, a pattern that's been accelerating in recent years and claiming lives at an alarming rate. Since 2018, at least one prominent rapper has been killed by gun violence every single year, with many victims being in their early to mid-20s. King Von was 26, Takeoff was 28, Pop Smoke was 20, XXXTentacion was 20, and Lul Pab was just 24. Some industry voices like Fat Joe and Jim Jones have called rap the most dangerous profession, but experts are quick to point out that this is really an American problem, not just a hip-hop problem. The United States has gun violence rates that are 7 times higher than peer nations, and black men between the ages of 15 and 34 face the highest rates of gun homicides. Rappers are dying young because they're often young black men from communities where gun violence is endemic, where street culture and music intersect, where beefs that start as lyrics or social media posts can escalate into real-world violence with fatal consequences. The question everyone's asking now is, what happens next? As of October 14, 2025, the date that was originally supposed to be the trial date before the latest delay, Durk remains in federal custody awaiting trial. His co-defendants are also detained, with some requesting pre-plea sentence reports suggesting they might be considering plea deals rather than going to trial. The motion to dismiss is pending, the anonymous jury request is pending, and everyone involved is preparing for what could be one of the most significant hip-hop related criminal trials in recent history. If Durk is convicted, it would send shockwaves through the drill music community and potentially change how artists approach making music about street violence. If he's acquitted, it would raise serious questions about whether the federal government overreached in trying to criminalize a music collective and use artistic expression as evidence of criminal conspiracy. Either way, the outcome of this case will have implications far beyond just the individuals involved. For Lul Pab's family, none of this brings him back. No conviction, no prison sentence, no amount of money from a civil lawsuit can restore what was taken on that August day in 2022, but they continue to fight for justice, to keep his memory alive, to ensure that his death means something more than just another statistic, another victim, another name added to the ever-growing list of young people lost to senseless violence. And with that, we've come to the end of this deep dive. For more juicy content like this, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and check out the card showing on your screen for more videos. Don't forget to comment your thoughts below.